Hi, it's Katrina. Number 10. The Moche Priestesses. The Moche civilization ruled over a huge swath of Peru between 100 and 800 AD. Although they were mainly an agricultural society, the Moche also had a penchant for human sacrifice. It was the elite members of the Moche who played the biggest roles in sacrificing people, as well as consuming human blood. When the tombs of the Moche priestesses were discovered, archaeologists made some shocking new revelations regarding these ancient people. The tombs of the priestesses were found during excavations at San Jose de Moro in 1991. The priestesses had been buried wearing beautiful golden headdresses, almost like crowns, unlike anything else archaeologists have found in Peru. But these powerful women were not buried in ordinary tombs. Their graves were luxurious, filled with offerings, sacrificial goblets, necklaces, and many other treasures. The reason these four women were treated with such reverence is that they were hugely important to Moche society. The four priestesses were in charge of all ritual sacrifices and likely had high places of honor among the ruling elite. The Moche believed these women had a special connection to the gods and a powerful secret knowledge that permitted them to lead as religious rulers. Their roles were somewhat similar to the ancient oracles from Greece, only these women had far more power when it came to actually governing. Number 9. The astronomical knowledge of ancient India. The Junapani stone circles in India are ancient, going back over 3,500 years to 1500 BC. Even though there are plenty of megalithic sites quite similar spread throughout the subcontinent, the Junapani stone circles are unique for one main reason. They show the earliest astronomical knowledge possessed by primitive people living in what is today the state of Maharashtra. Some of these stones are circular, some are long rectangles, and all of them were brought to where they still stand from a great distance away. Researchers believe they were intended to mark burial places, with the dead placed in the ground and then covered over with the giant stone circles. But here, unlike other stone burials in India, the ancients left circle marks called cupules carved into the stone. The organization of the marks suggests they were used as specific directions, reflecting major cosmic events such as the sunrise on the winter solstice. These ancient people very well could have had advanced knowledge of astronomy and displayed their knowledge on the stones found here. This was during a primitive time in India, a transition between stone and iron tools. Some have suggested the fact that people learned about the stars at the same time they developed iron technology is no coincidence. Of course, ancient alien enthusiasts believe that the ancient Indians may have been given knowledge on these subjects by a mysterious race far more advanced than themselves. For most, though, it is the evolution of human knowledge. Number 8. The ancient Etruscan Horospecs. The religious rituals of the Etruscans suggest they had mastered several different forms of divination or foretelling. The practice of telling the future in ancient Rome, before the Romans ever came to power, was done by special members of society called Horospecs or Horospeces. They were also called entrail observers, and they were responsible for announcing the will of the gods to the masses. How did they do this? They observed the entrails of sacrificed animals, like their guts and insides. We don't know if these people really had some kind of secret knowledge that allowed them to see what others couldn't in the insides of an animal, but that's what everyone back then believed. These entrail observers would take the liver and gallbladder of a sacrificed sheep, then observe and interpret the blood and gore until they had determined the future. The diviners were also charged with assessing any natural phenomena or unique events, such as floods and lightning storms. Whatever secret knowledge they claimed to possess, it gave them great power in society. Even though it was almost certainly a pseudoscience, divination grew to be a legitimate way to make decrees based on the supposed will of the gods. However, things changed with the Romans. Divination was still popular when Rome was a republic, but began to lose its importance as they shifted to become an empire. That said, there were still a handful of Horospeces around even in the 5th century AD, who claimed to know the will of the gods. Number 7. Scented sorceresses. Most of the major ancient societies believed in the power of scent. People from all walks of life, From the lowest peasants to the greatest rulers of Egypt, Greece, and Rome, all believed in magic up until fairly recently. In ancient Greece and Rome, people believed spells, curses, and healing magic all had to do with fragrance. Egyptian magicians used smells in their rituals. Scented inks were popular because they were believed to have power, and even doctors thought plants that smelled more pungent were more medically effective. There was even a belief that the gods themselves gave off a sweet odor. Fragrance and potions went hand in hand and could even defeat monsters. We still love perfume and scented magic markers, but did the ancient people have different formulas that could influence behavior? 2,000 years ago, it was believed that certain perfumes had the power to seduce men and even change their behavior or place them under spells. The famous Roman historian Pliny the Elder once wrote that there was a perfume that could make men forget and become totally dumb to what was happening with just one whiff. While it may have been some secret ancient knowledge lost to time, it could also have been an ancient version of morphine or ether. Who knows? And now for number 6. But first, want to give a big shout out to Jennifer Cassia for her donation. Thanks so much for supporting this channel. And if you are new here, be sure to subscribe for more videos like these and to join the Origins Explained family. Number 6. The Book of Abramelin the Mage. The Book of Abramelin the Mage is an ancient grimoire of magic, a tome that's said to hold all kinds of secret and forbidden knowledge. It's believed to be the inspiration behind many of the works of Aleister Crowley, and describes the life of a Kabbalist and magical scholar called Abraham of Würzburg as he journeyed from Germany to Egypt around 1362. It also goes into great detail about his magical and Kabbalistic knowledge, which he passed on to his son. Abraham recounts the tale of when he met Abramelin the Mage living in a small hermit shack in the desert, somewhere near the river Nile in Egypt. Abramelin passed his knowledge to Abraham, and Abraham to his son. The book comes in the form of 3 individual manuscripts and describes in great detail the purification process that one must go through in order to be able to utilize the great knowledge of Abramelin the Mage. Once a person is purified, they can then use spells described in the book for invocations of good and some of evil. One can use magic to acquire treasure, to force someone to love them, fly through the air, breathe underwater, and also raise the dead. But that's not all. The Book of Abramelin the Mage supposedly has instructions on how a person can transform their appearance, become invisible, and even start storms out of thin air. To do all this, it requires a mixture of magical sigils and mystical words, with these words being read in several different directions. There are also diagrams that must be recreated and rituals carried out. Do you think there's something hidden inside ancient grimoires that we simply can't understand? Let me know your thoughts on ancient magic in the comments. Number 5. The Hall of Records. There is an ancient legend that says beneath the paws of the great Sphinx in Egypt that guards the pyramids of Giza, there is an entrance to a secret maze. Within this maze is a place called the Hall of Records, a library containing the most important texts having to deal with alchemy, mathematics, astronomy, medicine, and magic. You've probably heard of the Library of Alexandria, which was supposed to have been the greatest repository of knowledge in the world. But this secret Hall of Records that's supposedly underneath the Sphinx is home to even more forbidden knowledge and was created thousands of years before the Library of Alexandria. The issue is that nobody actually knows if the legendary Hall of Records exists. The limestone rock around the Sphinx is just too fragile to break through. It's doubtful archaeologists will dig beneath the Sphinx in search of the secret Hall of Records unless the ancient monument crumbles on its own. Number 4. The Geometry of the Builders. After an exhaustive 5 years of research by archaeologist Anthony Johnson at Oxford University, he reached a new and exciting conclusion about Stonehenge. He says the ancient stone circle was designed and constructed using highly advanced geometry. In fact, Anthony claims the Britons living on the island during the Stone Age had such powerful knowledge of geometry it could have rivaled Pythagoras, the Greek mathematician known as the father of numbers. Yet this was 2,000 years before Pythagoras ever lived. Obviously, this discovery has major implications for Stonehenge, as well as for the people who built it. Anthony says geometrical knowledge was key in planning, prefabricating and then erecting the stones at the henge. Anthony also says the primitive Britons learned this skill not from some visiting aliens, but from constructing smaller and more simple monuments. In other words, they learned geometry through trial and error, teaching it to themselves. For proof, take a look at the most geometrically complicated achievement in Stonehenge. There is a circle within the henge of chalk-cut pits, each one marking the point of a 56-sided polygon roughly 240 feet in diameter. To create such a perfect shape, the builders of Stonehenge would have needed sophisticated knowledge of geometry, which they somehow mastered thousands of years before anyone else. Number 3. The Netherworld of Mesopotamia. Since the beginning of time, or at least the beginning of the human consciousness, we have speculated about the afterlife. That is to say, humans have wondered what happens to us when we die. The Egyptians left behind rich funerary texts and guidebooks to the afterlife. We know all about the ancient Maya trials one had to go through to reach their underworld of Xibalba. And of course, Hades in Greek mythology and the Christian heaven and hell are all pretty well known. But what about the Mesopotamian afterlife? Without the written records of their Egyptian counterparts, historians can only piece together clues to understand what they thought happened when they died. We know, thanks to the Epic of Gilgamesh, that Mesopotamians believed in the Netherworld. They also believed in ghosts and gods. But what's really fascinating is that the Mesopotamians were some of the first human beings to practice religion, and so many of the stories they concocted were copied, corrupted, and passed down to other civilizations that came after them. They may have been the first to come up with the idea for the Netherworld, a shadowy version of real life located deep underneath the Earth's surface. But it wasn't exactly hell. It wasn't a place of great joy, but neither of great misery. It was just a kind of bland, gray place where people went when they died, somewhat similar to aspects of the afterlife described in Greek and Roman mythology as well. The real question is whether the Mesopotamians had some kind of great secret knowledge about life after death. Remember, these are the people who created the stories of the Anunnaki, the celestial beings who came down from space and bestowed secret knowledge upon the cultures of the world, supposedly. It could be that whatever secret knowledge was handed to the Mesopotamians by the so-called Anunnaki gave them insight as to what happened to their souls after they died. Number 2. The Copper Scroll. In the 6th century BC, the Babylonian king Nebuchadnezzar II burned King Solomon's temple to the ground and plundered its treasures. One of the treasures stolen happened to be the Ark of the Covenant, which contained at the time the tablets upon which the 10 Commandments were written. This is all according to the Hebrew Bible. There has been a lot of speculation over what happened to the Ark of the Covenant since it was last seen 1,400 years ago, allegedly. Now we need to fast forward to 1952, when the legendary Copper Scroll was discovered near the Dead Sea in Israel. This was around the time that the Dead Sea Scrolls were being uncovered in caves and caverns all over the area. But the Copper Scroll was very different and may not have been connected to the rest of the Dead Sea Scrolls. It could have just been buried in a cave in the same area by coincidence. Whatever the case, the scroll described a vast treasure hidden in multiple locations throughout the wilderness of old Judea. It appeared to be a treasure map pointing to the lost locations of artifacts stolen from King Solomon's temple. This scroll was found over 50 years ago, and no one has found any of the treasure yet. However, that doesn't mean the whole thing is phony. These scrolls certainly belonged to someone who had some secret knowledge of lost artifacts, but considering how long ago the scroll was put in that cave, chances are the artifacts were already found by the time the scroll was uncovered. Number 1. Necropants. Ancient Icelandic people made magical pants. What I mean by that is that sorcerers in 17th century Iceland had the forbidden knowledge to create something called necropants, pants imbued by witchcraft to grant great fortune to whoever put them on their legs. The 17th century was a pretty rough time to be living in Iceland. There were many natural disasters, they were often raided by pirates, and the glory of the Viking Age was long gone. Life was hard, and so people frequently turned to witchcraft as a last resort to improve their situations. Even though witchcraft was popular, it still was not socially acceptable. Many people were burned at the stake for practicing witchcraft, the majority of which were male. But this didn't stop some sorcerers from making necropants. The pants were supposed to be able to give whoever wore them unlimited wealth, but of course it was a very tough ritual. To create the pair of pants, a sorcerer needed to make a pact with a friend in which the sorcerer was given permission to skin them from the waist down upon their death. The only way to make a pair of pants was to wait for this person to die, then dig up their remains and remove the skin from the lower half of their body. This would create the pair of pants, which would then be worn over bare skin. The sorcerer then needed to steal a coin from a destitute widow, put it in the rear end of the pants, as well as an Icelandic stave written on a scrap of parchment. So long as the coin remained inside the rear end of the pants, the wearer would be rich for the rest of their life. Now, either Icelanders really had some sacred knowledge on how to make magic pants, or they were going through all of this trouble for nothing. What do you think was behind this elaborate ritual? Why do you think ancient sorcerers believed in these magic pants? Let me know in the comments below, and thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and I'll see you soon for another amazing video.